my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. Come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
People have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite.
Now, there's one thing you might have noticed I don't complain about. Politicians.
Governments don't live together, people live together. Governments, you don't always get a fair word or a fair fight. Well, I've come here to give you either one, or get either one from you.
That is totally taken out of context.
Well, not really.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up,
T-minus 1 minute.
live out the true meaning of its creed.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
T-minus 50 seconds.
I am paying for this microphone, Mr. Every dollar released from taxation
T-minus 40 seconds.
that is spent or invested will help create a new job.
Chivalry is dead, and women killed it.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines.
T-minus 20 seconds.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing ground and in the streets.
10, 9,
We shall fight
8,
in the hills.
6,
We shall never surrender!
3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, welcome guys to the Problem Solver Politics live stream. We actually got a cool live stream set up for you guys. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey everybody,
And we also have with us today one Heidi Briones, candidate for office for actually Congress from Oregon's 1st district. Heidi, what's going on?
Hey, everybody. Everything's going really great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and she's rocking her Problem Solver Politics hat. I think you were in the first wave. You get credit. You're an original gangster Problem Solver Politics hat purchaser.
Absolutely. This is signed, officially signed by Cardin and Cody. And it says, I love lesbians, because I made them write that. That's my thing.
Actually, if I remember correctly, it was Lesbians for Yang. Look on the inside of your hat.
We wrote I love lesbians. But
I love lesbians.
Twitter.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious.
And also beyond that, just a little bit of inside lore. You, in general, have been one of our earlier fans. I remember seeing your name comment on our videos going way back. So I thought it was very cool. That's why when we started, we haven't done interviews for what? I don't know. I think the last interview we did, we had technical problems and lost all the data. And then a bunch of crazy stuff happened. We could never get together. So and I'm like, okay, I'm done with interview stuff. I'm tired of the audio not working. And that's why I've been watching you go from, like I said, I've seen you guys commenting on it and then just interacting on Twitter and now running for office. I was like, when we start doing interviews, you're the first person I wanted to reach out to, made sure we had.
No, you guys got me through, the beginnings of the Yang campaign for sure. And all of that, when there wasn't a ton of content on there, you guys just brought it like hard, and it was amazing when I followed you the whole journey. So it's been fun, and now here we are together. It's great.
Yeah. So basically, you've decided to run for Congress, and this is one of the really cool things that we really liked about the Andrew Yang campaign, that we actually had speculated in the very beginning that hopefully this would push the Overton window into more talk about UBI, and you're obviously one of these. Now I'd say about. Wouldn't you say maybe about 10? We've probably hit double digits now of different candidates that are running for more local positions. Obviously, you're not running for president, but for local Congress, local state assemblies, local state senates, and so on and so forth, that are really pushing this UBI. There's kind of like this UBI coalition that's developed, of which Heidi Briones is definitely one of the first out of the gates. So we wanted to make sure that we caught up and talk with her. It is kind of weird. Now I'm like friends with these like progressive people. I liked my tribal life before. This whole like following Andrew Yang thing, like now I have to be friends with all these people. They have like Act Blue links. I'm like, I don't want to sign up for Act Blue. Gotta like wash my hands. I'll send you a check. You know what I'm saying? But she's a super cool person.
I'll give you my address. It's cool.
Rock on. So anyway, she's a super cool person that actually garnered a lot of really great conversation in some of our early live streams. So we wanted to make sure that we had her on today to talk a little bit about her platform, a little bit what it's like being a candidate running for UBI, and what the experience is like, so on and so forth. So without me saying anything more and without any further ado, Heidi, just tell us like, what made you want to jump into the race, and how did you go just from being the person you were a year ago to all of a sudden saying, I like this UBI thing and I'm going to run for Congress on it? Like, what was that process?
Yeah, it's definitely a process in the making. I mean, there's obviously a tipping point, and the tipping point was Andrew Yang suspending his campaign was my tipping point. And pretty much immediately after that, I decided to declare. But going back before that, obviously there's some backstory, but I had a degree in politics, and I didn't necessarily get involved in politics. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and I decided to not do that, which was a good decision. And I went to Taiwan to teach English as a second language. So I did that instead, became a teacher for the better part of a decade. And teachers don't make a whole lot of money, let's be real. So I did a lot of other things in between then. I built my sales skill set. I drove for Lyft a ton, so I got to know the gig economy. When I was a PhD student, I would do freelance writing and sales jobs on the side to just keep myself afloat. Decided to leave my PhD program in linguistics and went up to Reno, Nevada, and got a job at the Tesla factory. And that was when I got introduced to automation. So they threw us on semi-automated lines where we were working with machines, building battery modules.
Oh no, you had to be part of the process. It's not even like they segregated the humans from the machines. You're actually forced. Like, did you start getting that effect? What was that movie, Ex Machina? Where like a human will forget that they're dealing with a machine and start imposing a personality on it. I can't remember the name of the effect that it's called, or like, just like there's the Rorschach test. I can't remember the name of the test, but supposedly there's a test where a human stops remembering that it's dealing with a machine and it forgets that it's dealing with a robot. Did you ever reach that point where you just started like talking? Did you name
Not
them
quite.
like in 2001: A Space
were
Odyssey?
Pretty, they weren't like that type of robot. They were pretty basic. They were basically like an assembly line that was, automated, and we would do our one little task, our one super repetitive part to it. But it does get weirder than that. I mean, Elon would come by actually a lot. Saw him like several times on my actual line, checking out what our processes were and how to make it more efficient.
Well, that's
One,
cool.
because we had a huge push for the Model 3. The battery modules had to get made crazy fast because everybody was like, they were back ordered. So we were helping with that. And then also so that he could make his automated lines run, because they were basically not running like he expected them to and smoothly. So they were basically taking feedback from us, from humans, on how to make their automated line work. So even crazier than that.
Hey, how can we get rid of your job faster? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
like...
Yeah. And for me, it was like, hey, this is kind of a fun job for me to do for a little bit. But a lot of my coworkers, this was like, they moved from the Midwest, from the Rust Belt. This was like their thing. They were like, I'm making $17 an hour now. I used to make $10 an hour. This is amazing. I can actually afford things now. And this is great.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna get rid of your job. Like this is sad. So that's kind of when I got introduced to the concept of automation. And then I heard Elon Musk mention universal basic income. I think Obama in a speech mentioned it. I just heard certain people talk about it, got into it. I thought it was a fringe type of thing. Didn't really think it was anything that would happen anytime soon. I knew it would happen eventually, but I was thinking like 50 years, out in the future. Yeah. And then, ran into Andrew Yang's campaign. Probably back, I guess, February-ish of last year. He started popping up, and I was like, what? There's somebody actually running on this? Like, is he legit? Yeah. And then, of course, went down the rabbit hole with everybody else. Watched everything obsessively that I could find on him. Read through all his policies. I'm like, this guy's legit. I like it. This is pretty cool. Let's see what we can do. Volunteered for him. Created my little Lesbians for Yang deal. And just got so obsessed that the second he dropped out, I was just like, well, we can't stop here. Like, if we can't be the cult of Yang, like we got to continue this, like, we got to make this actually happen.
Oh, that's too funny. So did you literally like just go on the internet and print out the FEC paperwork that night? What happened?
Pretty much. It was like the next day I was like, how to run for Congress. Like, it's like that. Like, it was like that. And I was like, what's the barrier of entry in Oregon? And it turned out it was only $100 to get on the ballot in Oregon. So I was like, well, that seems extremely low. So I think I could do that. And so I just did that real quick.
It's only $100?
Yeah, $100. And then, but I realized that there's a trick to that. So yes, you can get on the ballot for $100, very low entry, but to get into the voters pamphlet where people actually read about you and know who the heck you are, since we're vote by mail, everybody gets their voters pamphlet, little booklet. That's $2,500.
Okay, I was about to say, it's $3,000 here in California. Like, okay, so that makes a little bit more sense.
Do they get you to like per picture and then like per
No, for a picture it's more. It's such a racket. And the other thing is, if you want it translated, it's $800 more per language. So it's like this smorgasbord fee that you can pay. You're like, ooh, do I want to cater to the Vietnamese crowd? That's an extra $800. Like, if you literally want to get the top 10 languages in Los Angeles and you're running for Congress, you need a down payment of like $10,000, dude. You know what I'm saying? It's gnarly.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
But I got the signatures, actually. It was 300 signatures was the other. You could do either or. So I actually got Yang Gang together. This was back before we were obviously living in a pandemic. But I got them all together in late February, and we went out and we canvassed, and we got the 300 signatures. So Yang Gang came through for me. The PDX Yang Gang was awesome.
Okay, so were you wearing your problem solver politics hat during the process of gathering signatures?
I gotta admit I wasn't. I was wearing a math hat and a math.
I'm totally
math
kidding with you. I'm totally kidding.
The math hat probably gets you more signatures. In the
I was not gonna say. Probably a better idea. So anyway, I have to. Will you indulge me? And can I read a little bit of your About Heidi section? Because this was so beautiful. I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I'm only going to scoff twice. I only found myself scoffing twice. So if I were a teacher grading this is like a 98%. That's an A. All right. So anyway, hello, my name is Heidi Briones. I live in Hillsboro. I love the people and natural beauty of Oregon. I love that opening statement. It shows you're a normal person. It says, I also love that Oregonians are open-minded and progressive. I've learned, I bristle the word progressive now. That's my only bad one. But I like you. and I love citizen politicians, and you're a citizen, so we're going to keep rolling with this. I grew up in Southern California and often think, wow, Oregonians are what Californians used to be like. There's a lot of states that are like that now, where you go to them and you're like, wow, this is as cool as California was in the 80s before we all ruined it. You know what I'm saying? Before corruption and homelessness and pandemics and massive illegal immigration topped by the fact that they're taxing us like literally to death. So, and I'm not even going to get into that. But anyway, wow, Oregonians are what Californians used to be like. Always think of innovative ways to make tomorrow better. People used to say everything happens in California first, but to me that has changed. Now I believe everything happens in Oregon first. I am not ready to cede that everything happens in Oregon first yet from California. As a California myself, I'm not willing to cede that yet, but I continue because I identified this. Okay, I really identify with your story here at just as a fellow millennial. You and I swear we have like the same story here. The story of how I became a political reformer is in many ways ordinary. That is to say, my life challenges reflect those encountered by almost every young middle-class person of my generation. And what she's about to say here, audience, I felt in the core of my being. At the same time, I have lived an extraordinary life, having taught school abroad for several years and coming to the understandings of the realities of globalism. Allow me to tell you more. Like most people of my generation who were raised in middle class and working communities, I was taught that if you worked hard and got a great education, the American dream of prosperity and stability would be achieved. I was taught the same thing, Heidi. I think that was a great way to introduce who you were. And she continues saying, I believe those values and got a great education. I earned a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Santa Cruz, then a master's degree. But the robust job market I was promised didn't exist. I graduated in 2007, Heidi.
Yep.
4 months.
2006. Yeah.
2006, yeah. You 12 months, me 6 months before the crash of 2008, which Steve Bannon says is probably the single largest, most defining geopolitical event literally of our lifetimes, more than 9/11. And I actually agree with them. I actually agree with them. And then you continue to say, instead, millions of Americans were losing their homes to foreclosure, and the federal government's answer to that crisis was to bail out Wall Street investors and ignore Main Street homeowners. This is where I think progressives and Tea Party people are absolute brothers. Like people say they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum. No way, dude. I love that sentence. Instead, the federal government answers that crisis, which is bail out Wall Street investors, ignore Main Street homeowners. I have always had an adventurous spirit, so the absence of a strong job market made me easy to accept jobs teaching English, and you went overseas to Taiwan and South Korea. And then you mentioned how that taught you a lot about globalism and how it's actually a very real, not threat, but real phenomenon. And then this is what I loved. You said, when I returned home, I left my life of extraordinary travel and adventure behind and joined the ranks of the ordinary. In other words, the underemployed.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I was super educated, you continue to say, and super experienced, but I still could not find a job that could help me pay my student loans and live in a decent and safe neighborhood. Screw the American dream of a dog, a picket fence, a hot wife, a sports car, and like a home on the beach. Like we're just asking for a decent a safe neighborhood with a decent home and being able to pay off your own student loans, and you couldn't get that. So I worked in my field in part-time jobs and low salary positions until I couldn't take it anymore. I joined the gig economy and drove for Lyft for several years, was self-employed as an English teacher, and still couldn't find the stability. And then you continue going on, you know what I'm saying, to just talk a little bit about your story and what made you jump into the Yang campaign and things like that. But I absolutely love this because I think how pathetic our leadership is that we have an entire generation of smart people like you. Like me and Cody, we're smart enough to start a freaking YouTube channel, get 20,000 followers, and build from the strap of our boots. Your mic's not on.
I'm about to say, is it an insult to say we're smart enough to start a YouTube channel? Or is that like a...
Well, no, I'm just saying, like we're not just some dude with a blue Yeti microphone with a USB port into his laptop, where you're staring up at his nose hairs.
What's wrong with that? It's basically
it's horrible. The production value is horrible.
That's basically where we are with just a few more steps.
I know. I have much more pride of that in my channel. Okay. I take much more pride of that in my channel. But at the end of the day, our leadership is so stupid that you have full-blown or grown millennial males that are very talented like me, wildly underemployed for a decade of their life. While my grandpa was practically losing fingers working for the railroad, getting all of his Social Security, by the time he was 18 years old. I mean, he was married with 3 kids by the time he was 25. I hadn't even graduated with 40 grand in student debt yet. And then you got somebody like Heidi, who's super smart, lived abroad, speaks multiple languages, graduated from the Banana Slug University. That was your first bad call. But no, I'm just kidding. I'm totally just kidding with you. But anyway, I mean, she's got a freaking master's degree, and then she's going out into a job market, literally propped up by a bunch of boobers who our entire lives said, oh, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. Yeah, for what? So I can graduate into your freaking economy that sucks and does nothing for me and expects me to pay back loans that you didn't have to pay. You talk to the lawyers that are the senior partners in all of these law firms, and they graduated from UCLA Law School with $1 grand in debt, or else it was free. Now you graduate from UCLA Law School and you're $140K in debt. Anyway, I'm talking way too much. This is an interview with Heidi, not with me. So I just got to say, Heidi, mad props. I want you to go into details on your story, but mad props for this About Me section. I completely identified with that. And it's the leadership that has screwed us and created an entire generation of talented people like you that are underemployed. I want to know exactly how you intend to change that and what you're going to do. Because Andrew Yang himself said this city has a way of chewing up idealists and spitting them out. So what's the game plan?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy. It definitely would be an uphill battle. I mean, it's not like Washington's going to welcome me with open arms and be like, yes, please come in with your fringe UBI concept and not wanting to talk to any lobbyists. That sounds like what we welcome.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously it'll be difficult. It'll be really awesome if some of these other candidates can win, at least, have a few so that we can build a coalition so that when we actually, are writing bills, we can actually work, to get these things passed. I'm totally open with working across the aisle, obviously, and, doing the hard work that it'll take to flip some of the Republicans to UBI. And it would be even better if some Republicans, such as Dan Larson in Montana, if those type of Republicans can get into the Senate. I haven't heard of any running in the House on UBI yet. That could be wrong, though. I'd have to look up that UBI caucus website. But if we can build a coalition, it's going to be tough. But I think that we can get it done, especially post-COVID-19. Now that it's actually, the Overton window has definitely shifted. I think that it's going to be a topic of discussion. And I think that people that come in with UBI as their message, I think they're going to have to listen to us, and we're going to have strong demands, and we're not going to be career politicians. Everybody in the UBI caucus that I know of, is focused and mission driven, and we'll figure out a way that we can get it done despite the obstacles that will be ahead of us. But I think if you build a strong coalition, you're willing to work across the aisle, you can do some pretty amazing things, especially since Andrew Yang shifted the window for us.
Well, actually, I just thought of something in this interview that I'd never thought of before. Okay, so the Tea Party rose up. You know what I'm saying? Here, type it to me. I couldn't hear what you said. The Tea Party rose up, and, they put a bunch of candidates in there, and they tossed out a bunch of, establishment guys and so on and so forth. But then they were just considered like far right and pigeonholed with Republicans. And of course, then you kind of have the rise of the progressive movement, especially much more high profile over the past 3 to 4 years, where they were able to toss out in the Democrat Party a bunch of high profile guy that was actually going to be the next Speaker of the House. You know what I'm saying? But they're still considered like far left. We never actually have had a truly bipartisan coalition of young people. Like if there were a UBI caucus and you could say like, yeah, we got 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats from 6 different states.
Yep.
That's small, but that's really powerful. You know what I'm saying? Especially in an era of a generation. I come from a generation where everything is partisan. And if you don't think so, just watch the news about coronavirus. If you're a Democrat, you believe that it's America's fault. And you know what I'm saying? Like Trump started it somehow. And if you're Republican, you think it was a biolab in Wuhan. You know what I'm saying? Like you can literally lead the headlines and see the exact same press releases yield 2 completely different results. So that'd be really interesting. So I got 2 questions from that. Have you been in contact with any other UBI candidates? Mm-hmm. And also, what is the people's reaction when you go out there and you're like, hey, I'm a candidate that's really trying to push this UBI? Do people just look at you dupified? What's it like?
Yes. So number one, yes, there's actually a UBI caucus. I believe if you Google it, you could probably pull it up, and it is bipartisan. It was started by a guy in California, Ryan Blevins, who did run for Congress. He didn't make it, but he started the caucus, which is nice. You can actually look up and see all the people that are running on UBI, and there's mostly Democrats, but there's some Republicans there. So we do stay in contact. We have, multiple group chats that we're in. We have personal conversations. I personally work really closely with, Dan Larson in Montana, who's a Republican running for Senate on UBI, and his team. I've talked to them a lot. So we definitely have those relationships. And even though we can disagree on a lot of things, it's okay, because we really, really agree on UBI, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. So that's, one side of it. And I totally forgot the second part.
Oh, the second question was, so like, now that you're running for Congress, I mean, I've helped guys run for Congress before, and you show up to a bunch of really boring events, and you're just surprised. You're like, are these 8 crusty people really the decision makers for who endorse? You know what I'm saying? The X, Y, or Z county, Republican council or whatever, or you know what I'm saying? It blows your mind how crappy some of these councils actually are. We envision like, a fully functional FEC elected group of individuals and public servants. And then when you show up, I mean, it's worse than a retirement villa. You know what I'm saying? So what's it like when you go to a lot of these events and things like that? Do you feel there's a general understanding of UBI? Do you feel that you kind of just have to explain it to a lot of people? How's that go down?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I've been mostly campaigning during coronavirus. Oh. I haven't gone to too many events with the crusty folks. But when we were canvassing, back in February before, shit hit the fan, so to say, we did have a lot of conversations. We had some pretty interesting conversations with like some older people about UBI. They all knew what it was. Like, nobody was like, really, what is that? I think maybe we got one lady that was like, explain to me what that is. But most people knew what it was. They were somewhat familiar with Andrew Yang. They were like, oh yeah, I kind of liked him, that kind of thing. They're like, I'm not too sure about UBI, but I don't know. I'll think about it, kind of a thing. Or some were just on board. So I think that Oregon is a little bit ahead of their time in a lot of ways. And we do live in a pretty open-minded kind of area around here. So you got Nike here, you got Intel. I'm not in a super rural area. So when I'm canvassing over here, people are pretty aware. And some of them, I get supporters that like me for all different reasons. Some of them just like my general vibe. Some of them like me because I'm openly gay and I'm running, and they think that's cool. There's all kinds of different things. And then I can lead that conversation into, but I'm running on universal basic income. And they're like, oh, interesting. And they're like, that is kind of a good idea. Now, especially with coronavirus, when I brought it up to people, they're just like, yeah, I definitely think we should have one right now. Like, for sure. Like, absolutely. Like, and then maybe continue it on after. I don't know, but for sure right now.
That's not a tough sell.
So the conversations are getting easier and easier as we go through this. Yeah.
So like, it's so interesting you say that I'm campaigning during coronavirus, like right when people have basically received their first UBI check ever. I know the Trump checks are stimulus. It's not UBI, but really it's the first check from the government that somebody has received in an unconditional manner in my adult life. Since the Bush one, but I was barely an adult. I was barely an adult.
I didn't get it either. I'm just saying, technically, W did give people, what was it, $500?
$500, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 600 actually. I remember getting 600. That might have just been because I was a registered Republican.
Gotta look out for W.
I think he gave out extra. No, I'm just kidding. So we got some super chats. Cody, hit the super chats. We got some questions.
Okay, cool. Well,
you got to put the camera on you too.
I know.
It's been on me this whole time, and I'm feeling awkward.
Shout out to Captain Kel Diggs.
There you are.
Yeah, see, I'm still here. Shout out to Captain Kel Diggs. Super chats at Heidi for governor of Oregon. Hey, or also you guys might be. We were talking about it, you might be folded into. Hold on, we'll talk about that one second. I want to get to James Abrams. Also $50. What's up, guys? What's going on? And sub Heidi, you rock. Yang Gang currently on the New Jersey to West Virginia near Kentucky line, 82 miles away. Will listen, can't type back. Roland. P.S. This was pre-typed. Try to start until I pull over. LOL, Yang Gang. Well, thank you very much, Tim, man.
James, I love James. Thank you, James. He's one of my best supporters. He's awesome.
Oh, yeah, no, he's a very cool guy. Yeah. Very cool. I mean, that's one of the cool things about, it's kind of one of the interesting things about, and I think what's led to, we were just talking about the UBI caucus. I'll throw it back on the screen so you can kind of see these names of people right here. That was one of the things I wanted to kind of ask you about was what We talked before about when you kind of decided to run, but there is definitely, I've had so many people, you include, some people just speaking, it's almost like running on UBI, but not just UBI, Universal Basic, kind of the, I don't want to call it Yangism, I don't know the word for it yet, but kind of like the Andrew Yang idea of the future of politics. And I'm wondering if there's been anything over now obviously the UBI during the pandemic, but just as you've been going through the process, it's kind of one thing to say, I'm going to run like on Andrew Yang, it's not his whole platform, right? Your own ideas, but I'm going to bring UBI and kind of what he was talking about. But was there any been kind of moments along the way where you realized like, holy cow, that was one of the things people were talking about 9 months ago as you're kind of putting through your whole platform, if that makes sense?
You mean just like in his general overall philosophy, if that's
just anything that you've noticed over the months as you're kind of putting together now your platform as moving forward, where it's kind of like, oh, holy cow, yeah, now I do know why I'm X, Y, and Z have kind of come together in a certain way. I don't know, I feel like it's one thing to look at something, another thing, because I've seen just so many people that have been just inspired to run, where they're just like, you know what, to hell with it, I'm just gonna go run and make this happen. It just kind of over time, many pieces that have fallen into place, I guess.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess it's sort of what Carden was reading about my story and how that connects to so many people. I mean, I'm really just telling people my story. That's really all I'm doing. And people are like, yep. Like nobody's like, oh no. Like we send out these emails about my story and we'll have people respond that are like moms and older people. They're like, yeah, my kid's going through that. They've been struggling. And they tell me they're underemployed and that it sucks out there. And I hate that for them, and it's like, everybody's connecting with it. So I think it's more that overall just message that he tapped into that's so human. Mm-hmm. So I think it is the humanity forward, humanity first, whatever you want to call it. I really think it's that. It's this core to our humanity that we don't see in politics. That's just so real.
That's very cool. I think I saw one thing I thought was interesting was, I forgot who said it. I feel bad. I don't remember who said it. Hopefully it wasn't you. I'd feel really bad if I forgot it was you who said it. But someone brought up, it was something Andrew Yang had done. We're talking about something, and someone's like, oh my God, who let like an empath run for president, right? Like who let somebody like who actually feel that humanity first kind of start run for president? So I think it's really cool you say that. So the second thing I want to ask you about, one thing that's interesting for you guys, you're up in Oregon, and Oregon actually has been, I think, since 96 predominantly vote by mail. I mean, the idea of voting by mail has been just how things that you mentioned before. Everyone gets their booklet, so it's different. But has there been any ways? Obviously, it's interesting for you because it's like your first campaign you've run. But kind of, what are some of the interesting ways you've had to pivot into now learning how to? Because there is no playbook, I don't think, for how to campaign during a pandemic. You can ask somebody, well, what should I do? Yeah. Well, go knock on doors, go shake hands, go kiss babies. Can't do any of that. Has there been anything you've kind of noticed, like, okay, this is working, aside from doing podcasts and stuff like this, where it's kind of like, I don't know, how do you pivot during the pandemic, I guess, running for any office?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, it all sort of is a perfect storm because most of my volunteers are Yang, and they actually do better over digital. So I think it might have been harder to motivate them to like get out and knock doors with me because they're not like the typical like progressive like grassroots bunch necessarily. They're more like, I'm on the internet and I'm gonna help this. So we've done a ton of text banking, which has been one of the number one things so far that's worked very efficiently for both fundraising and voter outreach. And then also we've done Facebook ads that are performing really well because my message was just so timely. Like I was talking about this before it happened. So literally now I can be like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you had somebody in Congress that was proactive and had thought of these ideas before like this all went down and we already had UBI and we already had like these things set up? Wouldn't that be nice? And it comes from a very genuine place and people can connect with that. And they're like, that person makes a lot of sense. So I think that, harnessing the Yang Gang's talents and getting them involved digitally, and they've made me graphics, they've helped me with my website. They've helped me set up text banking. Facebook ads, videos, editing, all kinds of things that they've helped me do. I mean, if you saw the video that Andrew Yang retweeted where I was calling for volunteers, I mean, that got like 30,000 views. That was a pretty good one. So Sweet. I think that, we've been able to harness it really well. So I think it's going really well. I mean, it's kind of tough because there's no polls or anything or real data, but so far we have a really good response.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to ask you is obviously you're not a Democratic establishment candidate. And I don't know necessarily what the demographics of Oregon's first district are.
Pretty blue.
Pretty blue? Okay.
Solid blue, solid Democratic, yeah.
Oh, ugh. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, it's good. It gives her a chance. It's better than a solid win. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. Well, no, it's just that oftentimes more fun districts, like our district is actually pretty fun because it's 37 registered Republican, 37% registered Democrat, and then 20 some odd percent registered independent. So it's a fight every election. If you're in a spot where if you're 20 years ago when we were solidly red, if you were a Democrat in our town, it sucked. You know what I'm saying? Because you just knew you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, so your area is mostly blue, which means there was already somebody lined up to run in this race. And it was either an incumbent or else it was somebody who is, already been in the party, already been an establishment player.
Well, we have it right here.
Like, what's your biggest competition?
Suzanne Bonamici. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I stepped on your answer.
Yeah. Suzanne Bonamici. Yeah.
Okay, so are you getting flack from the establishment for running? Are they just ignoring you as a fringe weirdo candidate? Like what's
yeah,
like literally what's going on?
Some flack. Like we've gotten some weird emails where people are like, "How dare you run?" And then I had some weird guy that found me on Twitter and then found my email and was kind of mildly harassing me for a second for running against an incumbent during coronavirus. He's like, "How dare you run against a Democratic incumbent? She's trying to do things for our district during coronavirus."
Okay,
and I'm like, she hasn't done anything. She's been in there 8 years, and that's why we're struggling. Why wouldn't I run against her? Come on, that's ridiculous. I'm primarying her for sure. Come on.
So, what are your main arguments against what's your main arguments against the incumbent candidate? Is it just hey, they're sitting on their duff, not doing anything, or what's?
There's that. She's yeah. I mean, mostly it's just. I mean, she's been in politics for 13 years. Most people that I talk to that don't like her just say she's very blah, doesn't really do anything. They don't vehemently hate her, a lot of them. Some of them do. If they're very far left, they might just vehemently hate her because she's a corporate Democrat. She takes corporate PAC money. She's not afraid to take corporate money and all of that. She just kind of coasts. So a lot of people are just kind of over it when I talk to them about her. My beef with her is that she's on the, I believe it's called Space Science and Technology Committee.
Okay.
And she's never once mentioned job displacement by automation that I could find. And she's literally on the technology committee. So that's very disturbing to me because even if she wasn't pro UBI, you got to have that on your radar. That's what I'm talking about.
And that's also one of the biggest, most heavily automated areas. I've been to these factories.
Yeah.
Our district is one of the #1 defense districts in all of the world. In fact, Buck McKeon, our old congressman, was head of the House Armed Services Committee because every major factory for Northrop, Boeing, Rockwell, JPL, all that is in our district, okay? And when you talk to these guys and they build a new factory, I've known a lot of these executives that are in a lot of these different firms. And one of the first things they did was they talked to Ford and GM and the major automotive producers. And they said, hey, we're going to build a factory to build the F-27 whatever airplane, And they said, what recommendations do you have for us? And 15 years ago, these executive friends of mine were saying, yeah, their first recommendation was go robotic. Whatever amount of money you have to invest into robots, it's more worthwhile than HR. And we have to have at least 40% of our assembly line be human beings. And let me tell you, that 40% costs us more than all the robots combined in a decade between getting sick, lawsuits, union violations, sexual harassment allegations. The #1 bit of advice that the automotive industry had for the production of its cars, giving to the executives of the defense industry in manufacturing their airplanes and their drones was get rid of the humans. You know what I'm saying? So if you're having an opponent who's not recognizing that the largest industry, at least in my district at that time, besides maybe entertainment and Hollywood, you know what I'm saying? That the largest industry, their primary recommendation from GM and Ford is to automate, then that's just a huge dereliction of duty. Either that or it's just mondo naivete from a rich corporate Democrat who literally is just detached.
Yeah, probably more of the detached thing is the vibe I get from her. She seems like a nice lady. There seems like nothing wrong with her. She just seems like a typical rich corporate Democrat, to be honest. I think I looked her up and her husband's a judge, some kind of high level judge, and she's got a $6 million net worth, which is 6 times Andrew Yang's, I think.
Wow.
So
That's
I
pretty
mean,
good,
she's pretty cushy. She's got a nice little setup, and she sees it as a career, from what I can tell. And she cruises on through and gets tons of money. She's got $400K cash on hand.
Really?
You know, and I've got whatever I have, 4K. So it's just like, you know.
So are you making headway? That's what I was going to ask. I mean, there's plenty of people that have come from behind it. I've seen so many success stories of people where it was just like, this was the time and this was the place to make change.
Our own district.
You know, yeah, our own district. I mean, Katie Hill, before she ended up being a disastrous, you know,
the campaign was
you're in Katie Hill's district. Okay.
Yes, she wanted. The campaign was better than perhaps.
I don't know if I call it a district until we get somebody reelected. I just call it our failed state.
Was it like Jank? Did Jank run there?
Yeah,
he tried.
Yeah,
we're
same
in the clown car.
Same with Papadopoulos, who went to jail for not ratting on Trump or something. I don't know what he went to jail for something. I don't. One sec.
We had Cenk Uygur, the guy who fell on his sword for Donald Trump running
for some reason.
We had the volcanologist that I voted for. There was a Democrat who was actually a really cool chick named Jess Phoenix, and I voted for her because I always love
Jess Phoenix.
I love citizen politicians. So it was in the primary. It wasn't in the general, but I voted for her in the primary because I wanted to boost that girl's profile. She was cool. And then, yes, we got Cenk, we got Papadopoulos, and then we got Katie Hill, the only girl that's actually had an ethics violation landed against her.
But she didn't run. Running actually, we're not going to get in 25th. But hold on. One thing on something like the sign of question, I want to ask you something because you would be running to represent Oregon as a congressional representative. What is your stance on the recently formed Western States Pact that would encompass California, Oregon, and Washington? Because someone was asking in chat earlier, it kind of ties in. Someone asked about
Cascadia.
Yeah. Well, this would be kind of like it'd be the Western States Pact because you wouldn't get Canada. You would get all the way down to the southern border of California. But because part of the reason why this is being formed is to help reopen the states, and someone asked something in the chat about what your stance, and kind of our stance in general, on reopening the country now is. So I wonder, would that be something you would support just in office? Because right now it's coming as a big thing, obviously, is the states... Would you support states deciding basically across the board when they should be reopening as opposed to a federal reopening or the inverse? I know it's kind of a big question, but I just mean because we're seeing stuff happening like California, Oregon, and Washington making their own little pact and saying, we'll reopen when we're ready, thank you very much. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think that if the states are doing a good job and they know the data and they're actually testing people and they can actually be like, hey, we're ready, like this is our curve, then I think that should be their right. But if they're literally doing no testing and they're like, woo, let's just go, then I think that's a little irresponsible. So I think we have to look like kind of state by state and situation by situation and look at actual data and be like, cool, you've tested 0 people in the last 30 days. That's a problem. Like, you have no idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I think it's not as simple as just like, yeah, let them do it, or no, don't. We got to look at this more pragmatically, I think. It's more complicated than that.
All right, very cool. So then, and then also, so in general, do you support the idea of the Western States Pact encompassing, because we would be brothers in arms, so to speak, in the Western States Pact.
We will fight for Miss Briones in Oregon.
My candidacy for the president of Cascadia right now. I will run
for
president as soon as we open it up. No, that'd be awesome. That'd be dope. I mean, obviously, I lived in California, so I'm used to talks of like, we should secede, or there should be NorCal and SoCal, and then I lived in Santa Cruz, which everybody talked there all the time about it being their own country. We're like, we're just going to be our own country. And I'm like, shut up. Like, there's no economy here. but so I lived in lots of places like that, but I got to say it would be epic. I mean, what if we had a high speed rail from like LA to Seattle or San Diego to Seattle, that would just be just amazing. And it would be the most kick-ass country ever. So I definitely support it in theory, and I'll definitely run for president of Cascadia. Pragmatically, I don't know how it would happen, but yeah, I support it. I support Cascadia.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's funny. The Republic of Cascadia. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. If she were now the first female president of the Republic of Cascadia, and
first of many different types of presidents.
Yeah, I was like, say, well, then she'd have beef with that Marcus guy that had sent that open video to the Islamic Republic of Iran.
You have to be careful about the Iranians,
declared himself the future president of California. So what if from Cascadia there was a secession?
Cal Exit, not of California, of Cal Exit.
Oh, of Cal Exit.
Separate story. I'm sorry.
No, he said, I am the future president of the new Republic of California, the independent Republic of California.
It's a separate story. That would be, I guess.
I'll run against him. Let's go.
That would be one of your first, I guess, one of your first actions as president of the new Western States Pact to stop California from then seceding again from the Western states. There was one thing to secede. Like, we've had enough of this now. We're seceding again. But then I guess just to get back in a little bit more serious, in general, I want to ask, because I'm wondering what has been going on for you as a candidate? Because I'm sure, generally speaking, they would organize. There'd be some state and local level events that a candidate like yourself would be appearing at. I mean, there'd be all kinds of things coming up in the next few months. You'd be trying to go spring festivals and stuff. With all that shut down, has there been any communication? Have you been able to find anything from the state on what they're going to do with these upcoming elections? They're just going to say, well, people got the pamphlets, so vote through those. I mean, has there been anything they've been trying to say about setting up virtual town hall events, or has that kind of just been like, hey, look, there's no public events at all, guys, so you're kind of on your own?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird because right before it was declared an actual national emergency, I was getting all these emails from, like the Democratic Party, like, come to these events, and it was always super expensive. So I was just like, what? Like, like $5,000 and we'll put your name on the thing and you can schmooze with all these like bigwigs. And I'm like, cool, not really my scene. So I was getting some of those, things, and then it sort of just stopped. And the only thing I've seen as far as virtual town halls was, I believe, the incumbent's done a couple. I believe she's had some virtual streams. I don't know if anybody tuned in, but I believe she's had a couple.
So here's my question: What keeps you from just getting stomped? I mean, obviously you're the underdog, okay? Yeah. Obviously, you're the underdog, but David was the underdog too, and he walked out with Goliath. And the orthodoxy of the time was presented by his father, who was king, or one of his friends who was king, and said, "At least use my armor." And he's like, "No, I won't use my armor because I got the power of God, and I got this really cool sling." You know what I'm saying? And then the famous story is that with the sling he knocked out Goliath, right? So like, what's the sling? How is this not a story of this fun little lesbian running around promising free money? You know what I'm saying? That ultimately gets squashed by the establishment and a bunch of old boomers that are like, who's that kid? What's she doing? What is she, one of those vegans from UC Berkeley that moved up to Oregon's first district? You know what I'm saying? Like, so what keeps you from just getting stepped on like a little bug with $4,000 by the corporatist who's got 400,000 in the war coffers and can just like accuse you in negative Facebook ads of something heinous and run you out of town? Like, what is your sling? What's your David and Goliath sling, Heidi?
Totally. Well, one sling that I have is that she's not going to campaign or try at all. So there is definitely an opening for a dark horse candidate here.
Like an AOC
she's not
victory,
gonna try.
huh?
She's not going to try. My personal sling, I believe, is my message. And Oregonians do read their voters' pamphlets, and they sure as hell are going to read them now that they're stuck at home. Yeah. Got shit else to do. They're going to open their voters' pamphlets. They're going to read about this little lesbian trying to give away money. And they're going to look me up online, because this is what they do. We're super nerdy here. They actually take their voters' pamphlet out. I've talked to people, and they sit down with their family, and they Google the candidates. And I'm going to have a pretty powerful message. I mean, if you look at my website, even versus the incumbents, looking pretty good. I have tons of interviews. If you look at my interviews, I have so much. People could do a deep dive into Heidi Briones that they cannot do into any of the other people running. I do have 2 other people running against Bonamici with me, I guess. Okay. We've actually talked a ton, and we're kind of building a coalition among the people to take her down.
Oh, wow.
So basically, they're going to look at the people that are running. They're actually going to sit there and have the time and have an informed decision. And they're going to see a lot of cool stuff about me and really jack all about everybody else. So I'm basically, my sling is my message. And my sling is, unfortunately, the situation that we're in, giving people that time to actually do that research that they normally will do times 10 and vote by mail. I mean, all of this combined creates an opportunity for me.
Yeah, see, I was about going to say, what's so interesting is in my mind, I almost view coronavirus as being a big flattening a playing field. Because no matter how much money you have to go out and hold a big rock concert, you know what I'm saying, with this, band that shows up, and you have this big free event that just happens to be conveniently across the street from the registration.
You mean like the Strokes?
Yeah.
Rip Bernie Sanders.
Exactly. Like, I mean, we had a big one over here where Kanye West. No, sorry, there was that big one in Detroit where Kanye West did it for Barack Obama in
West?
2008.
Are you sure?
Oh, yeah, it was like 10 years ago. Like one of the biggest political rallies ever. Kanye West was the headliner, and it just happened to be conveniently across the street from like 50 voter registration booths. You know what I'm saying? It was crazy. You know what I'm saying? Well, those kind of high dollar events that the people with 400K can pull off. You know, we've all seen them, these lavish fundraisers, the wine caves, the $500 a plate McDonald's burger meals. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like,
They got
obviously,
those up there in Oregon. They got wine caves in Oregon.
You got wine caves?
Well, there's a lot of wine in Oregon, so yeah, they probably have a wine cave somewhere. I guarantee it.
Yeah. So I view has coronavirus really been kind of a flattener? Because now, no matter how much money you have, you can only spend that money basically on Facebook ads. But at the end of the day, those Facebook ads just drive traffic to a lot of these sites that show you who the candidates are, and ultimately you end up just looking them up on their website, and that's a big equalizer. That's a great equalizer. So has coronavirus kind of equalized the playing field, or do you feel that people with more money still have a big advantage? Like, I know you've never run a congressional campaign before, so you don't have anything to compare it to, but like, has it changed any of your strategy? Do you feel like something's working? Like, how has coronavirus actually affected that?
I mean, yeah, the data that we have shows that what we're doing is working, both from Facebook ads and text banking. So far, very effective. And I think, yeah, the fact so many different factors have leveled the playing field. And the fact is that people, you know, realize how fragile our economy is right now. And they realize that Congress hasn't done crap about it, including the incumbents that have been in there for a better part of a decade. So I think that I'm relying on them to think. And I have a lot of faith of the people in my district. They're actually pretty savvy as far as the conversations that my volunteers have had. So basically, you know, we can still reach them in their homes. I have phone banking that I'm getting set up this weekend. We're going to call everybody. I have some dope Facebook ads dropping when people get their voters pamphlets. I have some ads dropping about how I'm a proactive candidate and your incumbent is not.
All right.
You know, I have some really cool ads dropping that people are going to see, and she's not going to do any of that because she doesn't think anybody's a threat. And that's basically what levels the playing field, is that now people that are savvy, know the internet, can actually make some cool videos, put them on Facebook and have a strong message. You know, that those type of candidates can win now. I mean, not that, you know, obviously this is a horrible thing. A pandemic is not anything you would ever wish, but maybe it'll spur this movement. Maybe it'll get all these like younger, savvy, internet, you know, internet friendly candidates into office at the perfect time where we can actually get in and make a difference. That's the best possible scenario. So we'll see. I could definitely get smashed, of course, just like normal. It could just be like a normal year. But you know what? I'm going to come in a very strong second at the very least. I already can tell that from what we're seeing in just the data and the response that we're getting.
Well, enough that you'll get attention from the party, and then they can absorb you and assimilate you, and then start getting you the corporatist super PAC money so that you can live a lavish lifestyle, so that you can then ignore the next little lesbian that's running around promising people money.
No. That's not what I want to do. I don't even want to be a politician. I want to get the policies passed and go home to my wife.
So we got some super chats. Cody, want to hit them?
To those and then you brought up something I want to take a look at in a second too. So really quickly, I want to give a shout out to Jay Watt. He said had to unjoin due to COVID. Once things get going, I am back, baby. Think Cardinal like my enthusiasm, even though my favorite. Mr. Oracle, go Heidi, even though I am in Montana now. Oh, hey, I think we got people running on UBI in Montana.
Yeah.
Vote for Dan.
Yeah, about to say it. Pick a state. There's somebody running on UBI. We're going to make that happen one way or the other. That'll be the end of this legacy. We'll have one in all 50 states. I don't know if anyone, I guess, technically, oh no, Tulsi isn't running. I was like, Tulsi, you can go to Hawaii, right? You got it in Hawaii. You got people running on UBI, but I think Tulsi said she's not running for office anymore. Anyway, though, I'll say, remember AOC came out of nowhere. Indeed. And people in Oregon actually read weirdly. That is true. So actually, two things I want to touch on. Oh, sorry. First thing you brought up earlier, that your website is better than Mrs. Bonamici, and I agree. I just pulled it up, and I definitely agree. A big thing. Oh, I have to move it so you guys can see it.
I do miss the bow tie, though.
I will say it was nice seeing this 2009 YouTube logo. I've not seen this YouTube logo in, man, a very long time. So it was very nice seeing again. So I thought that was funny. But then in a little bit more seriousness, one thing I thought was really interesting, and kind of as he pointed out, and it's what I've really thought I've seen as something moving forward that could be interesting. He brought up I'll make sure I get the name. I always forget people's name. Jay Watt, thank you. Brought up the idea of AOC. Now, one thing AOC did win with was the assistance, not the assistance of, but well, actually she won heavily with, but there was a group called Justice Democrats that was trying to get progressive Democrats in office. What I'm trying to say is, I definitely think that is what Humanity Forward I kind of envision being for. Like I said, Yangism isn't an actual policy platform to run on, but UBI, I guess, would be the thing. And I'm just wondering if you've had any contact with them yet, if they've reached out to you yet. Because you seem exactly like the kind of candidate that's like, that seems like, to me, the wheelhouse. They should be endorsing people like you running across the country. I'm just wondering if you've heard from them yet, or what's going on with that.
Yeah, I've been pretty much very vocal on Twitter about, like, Andrew, endorse me. What's the deal? Like, are you guys going to put out a questionnaire, for Humanity Forward? Your number one priority says getting us into office. What's up, dude? So I've been, pretty active and, being the squeaky wheel on that one. So
are they coming through for you? Like, you were slaving away for the Yang campaign. You think that the littlest he can do is throw you an endorsement bone.
That's exactly the kind of candidate I imagine they endorse him. I'm like, yeah,
man.
So
he hasn't come out for you yet? He hasn't come out swinging for you yet?
Well, what they did is, of course, he's like giving me some shout outs on Twitter, which is nice, but like, I need something official, obviously,
Yeah.
But what they did is he retweeted that video that I made for the Yang Gang. And then, his spokesperson, Eric Sanchez, was in like my DMs and we were talking and he was like, let me know what else we can do. And I'm like, dude, I need an official endorsement. That's what you can do. And then it was really funny because literally that night they put out their questionnaire and they put it on their website, like apply here. And everybody was like running over there. I was up like in the middle of the night, like typing it up. So I have applied, for endorsement by Humanity Forward. I signed their pledge. And I told them, yo guys, like my primary is coming up. And if I win, there is no general. Like this district hasn't been Republican since 1975.
Oh, it languishes in sin. Ugh. I just keep going.
Yeah, but that means that if I win my primary, it's over. Like, it's not like I'm not going into a general. Like, there's no time to wait. You can't like endorse me after the primary. I'm going to be like, cool, thanks. Like, would have been nice to have your support.
Exactly. And you know what? Speaking of, though, much like AOC, once she won her primary, she basically won her district.
Yep,
so, yeah, I definitely really hope they reach out to you because, this is exactly the kind of race that they should be targeting.
I'm calling up this Amy Murray and Christopher Christensen.
Yeah, that's the name.
The Republicans running in Oregon first. I'm being like, the Republican idea, championed by Milton Friedman, passed by Nixon and by a Republican Senate in 1969, and then passed by the Alaskan pipeline dividend governor in what was it, 72, is now getting commandeered by the Democrats. Like, you guys need to freaking get your butts in line.
They're sleeping. They're sleeping.
You guys
They're
are sleeping on
calling
this.
me a socialist somewhere and they're sleeping on it, but yeah.
Oh, dude, that's
because
crazy,
I don't know,
man.
because that's just to get to the point. Because one thing, I just waiting for. I'm assuming. I don't know. I always give the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully, it's just the coronavirus stuff they're condemned. Because definitely you should get endorsement from Humanity Forward. I think that's what the future of the you don't get UBI. I mean, you can try to get UBI passed just through the executive branch, but ultimately you're going to need multiple people.
No.
Exactly,
Yeah,
you need everyone doing it.
Branch.
Exactly, and the easiest way to start
executive
that.
order UBI, Like,
Well, I guess you could try, but you probably can't do it. But that's what I mean. This, I think, is the future. Fundamentally, I think is one of the reasons why I'm so. It's so like it's not inspiring, but it's so awesome to see so many people running on this. Is because that's how it's going to get done. I think Cardin brought it up earlier. I know it's kind of maybe not have been the best thing, and that'd be kind of goofy. But yeah, when the Tea Party people did shut down the government in 2013, it led to a few years later Trump getting elected and doing a lot of stuff they wanted to do. And I think this is how we need to start getting people in right now on UBI who are willing. Imagine that. Imagine we shut the government down over UBI during a relief thing, something like that. If there was the base in now, right? So I think this is the future of where you start it. And I don't know. I really definitely, it's one of the reasons why I definitely want to have you on. I wanted you to talk. Because I definitely want to see people like you win all across the country. Because that's how we're going to start doing this. We need to start with getting a few people in office and few key parts to start raising some hell and making some noise about UBI getting passed. Because, I mean, right now we've seen, I think it's Tim Ryan and a few others have proposed a short-term $2,000 UBI for people who make less than, I think, like $125,000 a year to last over the course of this pandemic. Which two things. One, I was walking by and he was actually on Fox News getting interviewed about that. So it means already we've seen UBI is something they just discuss openly on the news now.
Yep,
and
everywhere.
How much of that I think is going to really help people like you, and you in particular, but all across the country when it goes to the ballot? The biggest thing to me is, have you noticed a change? And I've done this myself a lot, where I will just say UBI to somebody, assuming they, of course, know that stands for Universal Basic Income. Have you noticed, though, any change in the short term of being able to say UBI to strangers and have them recognize what that means more? Because I've noticed a little bit of, it used to be I would say, oh, people would ask me, who's Andrew Yang? He's the guy supporting UBI. And they'd go, oh, cool. What's UBI? I'm just wondering if you've noticed that, just speaking to people in general, if that profile has been raised in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, literally, like the text that I send out mass to like everybody in the district is like, hey, I'm Heidi Briones. I'm running on universal basic income and universal health care and reforming our democracy. Do you support me? And they're like, yes. Like, and it's like, it's right there, So people definitely know what it is and know about it. As far as UBI, yeah, it depends. I mean, I guess not everybody knows the shortened version of it, but I think if you say universal basic income, people get it. Or if they don't, I mean, honestly, if they're a progressive, to be honest, they're kind of like cool with it. Like, they're not like against it. Like, they might have some, they're like, might be scared of certain things, like, oh no, is it going to get rid of welfare programs? Or, that's the same arguments. But I haven't run into anybody really, as far as Democrats, that, super unfamiliar with the term or that hate it or that anything. So yeah, I've definitely seen that shift just from the conversations that I've been having.
Very cool. Okay, then the last few things here. I want to take all your night. I don't know if you want to filling it longer, please feel free, but I want to take all night up. But one thing, we have $2 super chat from Emily Kingsley, by the way, shout out, saying, I just donated and followed Heidi on Instagram. So very cool. And then,
yeah, Emily, thank you so much. That's amazing.
Of course, yeah, and all of you link in the description, people can find you. And then also, from Jay Watt says, what does Heidi disagree with AOC on? She gets viral. How would you and Heidi stand out from her? So I guess it's one question. Is there anything you disagree with her on? And then is there anything you see from kind of her viral playbook that you can maybe take? I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of similarities between us, kind of in our story. The epic, David versus Goliath win, taking down an incumbent, being in a solid Democratic district. And I told Scott Santens when I met him in Portland, I was like, I want to be like what AOC was to Medicare for All, Heidi Briones is to UBI, So in that sense, like, definitely. What do I disagree with her on? I mean, there's a lot of things. I think that she misses the mark on certain things. She's a lot more
Green New
partisan.
Deal. Green New Deal. Taking over all homes. Green New Deal. Taking
right.
over homes.
I'm not a fan of federal jobs guarantee in the way that they are. And, I was okay with the earlier instances of the Green New Deal that focused on a UBI. There actually was some early proposals that had UBI built in there. But I think it makes absolutely no sense to have federal jobs guarantee and Green New Deal without universal basic income. I just think that you're trying to propose a 1940s policy, in 2020. So I think that, they're just a little bit too much on the ideology side, and I'm a bit more of a pragmatist.
Because at the end of the day, it's not a Green New Deal about environmentalism if it's dictating how we pay our citizens their economic income. Like, environmental legislation should be environmental legislation. Like, hey, let's keep less than 5 parts per million of mercury out of the drinking water. Not, oh, hey, let's introduce a federal jobs guarantee.
Everybody get to work on this.
Because then words no longer have any meaning. Like, they honestly, if pieces of environmental legislation have tacked into them, a bunch of economic mandates about how we pay our citizens and convert our entire economic system into basically centrally planned socialism, a la 1920s, Prussia and Russia, then it's no longer green anything. It's an economic bill, not an environmental bill. And so anyway, we got a couple other super chats here, and then guys, we got like 5 more minutes left with Heidi here. So any other questions you got for her? Hammer them out. Any super chats you want to get out of your system, just throw them our way. Let us know what you got some questions for.
We can keep going if you guys want to a little bit. We can.
Cool. Well, I also do have to. I promise.
You gotta go. Okay, Car next has to go.
Yeah. So anyway, Jay Watt says, Cody, you're my fave. Sorry, Carden. Dude, this is twice, Jay Watt. that you have expressed that Cody
Wow.
is your favorite. I don't know. I don't know if you're trying to say something here, dog. But anyway, I'm just kidding.
Hey, feel free to share your opinions on this channel.
Yeah.
Unpopular, popular. Don't worry about it, man. Just sharing whatever you're feeling right now. We want to hear it.
Just share.
Pro Cody or Cardin for the poll up.
Yeah, I'm almost. That's. I can tell you right now. That is a community post poll that I will probably never post because I fear the answers. You know what I'm saying? I absolutely fear the answers.
Get some ones in the chat.
Can we get some ones in the chat? So, see, the only problem is us elder millennials and boomers. Like, we'll be like, ones in the chat, what? You know what I'm saying? So that'll be a disproportionate representation of the younger part of our audience, Cody. So, okay, cool. My last question for you here is I've already asked you what's keeping you from just getting squashed. Asked you if you've been noticing that there's been a huge leveling of the playing field with coronavirus and so on and so forth. And the third is what, like, obviously this came from a good place. You know, I love how Ronald Reagan said, I never felt like a politician who was running for office. I felt like a citizen who wanted to help his people. So I always viewed myself not as a politician, but as a citizen politician. Okay. Do you notice that there is, like, do you feel there's actually a real path for you? You know, like when you're going out there and you're talking with these people, are there any measurable quantifiers that give you kind of a specific hope? Because coronavirus is going to be so weird. You know, without having polling places that are physical, you know, usually, at least in California, for example, we know that, okay, only 40% of the people vote on election day. And generally it's the Democrats that show up first. You know what I'm saying? And then the conservatives show up after they come home from work, you know, and there's at least some predictability that kind of makes you think like, oh, okay, they're only 10% ahead. Oh, that's fine, because we usually shift 15%, you know, like, and there's all of this apocryphal lore that exists in every district that supposedly claims to be able to add predictability to the system. But is there anything that you've seen that has made you think like, wow, like I really have a shot of doing a huge upset here? Because without any of the usual events, like, you know, Ronald Reagan famously got super famous and his star rose with his great speech at the RNC. And Barack Obama famously had his awesome speech at the DNC. You know what I'm saying? And there's all these kind of events that people can go to in which if their star rises, they gain a lot of famosity and so on and so forth. Is there anything you have seen that's like a measurable quantifier that really puts a fire in your belly and makes you think, boom, you know, like we are really actually pulling off a David and Goliath here?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, first of all, coronavirus is an advantage for a state that's already had mail-in voting set up. And, you know, they're predicting a higher turnout than normal and people filling out their ballots even sooner than normal. So there's not going to be any disruption of our democracy. So that's definitely a good thing. And it's going to make it really easy for, you know, people to do what they would normally do and probably, yeah, higher percentages. So there's that. The measurable quantifiers have been the Facebook ads. I'm not exactly an expert there, but the percentages that we were seeing of people actually doing the call to action that we had were, you know, twice what the person working on it has normally seen.
Oh, cool.
So normally they were seeing about, you know, 2 to 3% on other campaigns they'd worked on, and we were seeing more like 5 to 6. So they thought that was extremely high from what they've seen. That was quantifiable. The other quantifiable thing was responses from text banking. I have a lot of experienced text bankers that have worked on other campaigns, other UBI campaigns in California. And they were saying they weren't meeting nearly as much, you know, no's, and people were supporting the incumbent. A lot of people were way more open and wanted to have long conversations with them about me and who I was. So that's a quantifiable thing that we have. We have the data on that. We have the amount of people that had said yes to put a freaking yard sign that says my name on their lawn after just talking to a text banker a little bit or seeing my website or watching a video on YouTube.
Wow.
We've have quite a bit of those going up, and I've delivered them by hand with a mask on and everything. It's super fun, and had people come out very excited to see me and like actually put it right on their lawn right in front of me. So we have some real quantifiable measures that it could be a large upset.
Dude,
and
I'll phone bank for you. I'll call all the Republicans and I'll be like, look,
that
dude,
won't help.
look, this is a blue district. Look, we all know just one election. At least get the UBI chick. You got to throw the UBI chick in there.
Is it a closed primary in Oregon? Or is it an open primary?
No, she
Closed.
said that it's a.
No, it's closed. Yeah, it's
Oh, it's not
traditional
an
closed primary.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you have to be a Democrat to be able to
So
vote
perhaps
for
it
the
would
Democrat?
be indeed a little bit better to reach out to Democrats.
Okay, fine. Dang it. Then I'll be like,
but just to the
I'll be like,
point,
look, you
I
made
thought
a
it was-
mistake registering for Democrat, and you've been voting wrong your entire life, but now you have a chance to make good by voting for
re-register.
Heidi Briones. You know what I'm
Change
saying?
your registration
Yeah, I'll
right
be
now.
like, yeah, you can change your registration after this phone call, but make sure you vote for Heidi first.
Hey, I guess if you get 1,000 people to register Democrat, and that's a pretty strong pitch. Hey, I got 1,000 people to register.
Yeah, but I need a lot more than that to win. So that's not where I have to focus. I gotta win Democrats over.
Exactly. But one thing I thought was cool you brought up earlier, and I think it was funny. You like to Cardin brings this up a lot. What is it? It's the Bane quote from Batman. But I think as we move on further and further now down this just the pandemic, and I think just as elections are going, where it's moving online, I definitely think people coming from this kind of Yang genesis. In sports, they'll call them coaching trees, right? You'll have like one head coach and his assistant becomes a head coach, and then eventually all those people are head coaches. I think that's one consistent you brought up is that a lot of us kind of, it's like, a lot of these politicians will be merely adopting the internet, but a lot of us, like, we've come from this, like campaigning, text banking from across the country, people, phone banking, like, this is all stuff we've done from the beginning. This is what people are more comfortable doing. I do really think, just to your point, that is kind of one thing that empowers a lot of people coming from this is it's funny. It's like, walking in and shaking hands with strangers as a volunteer for people might be weird, but if I could just text them from my computer, I'm cool doing that. I'll do that even if I live in Kentucky or Washington or wherever I live, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that's
definitely
very
what
cool.
I've been seeing, and Yang Gang has been awesome. I mean, everything's been tough with coronavirus, but I have raised like $15,000. Average donation $23. So that's pretty cool.
Hey, dude,
and
that's
it's been,
awesome.
Yang Gang powered. They've been all my volunteers. I mean, I've probably got like 100 Yang Gang volunteers, which is crazy. So it's amazing. It feels good to keep the movement going, and everybody feels really good about helping me and makes them feel positive, and it makes them feel, better about things.
Cool. So Captain Kel Diggs says, #Team Cardin. LOL, Cody won't play WoW with me anymore. So, that's an ouch. That's an ouch.
We were talking. I'll come back to Classic once the BC expansion hits.
Okay. Jaywalk continues saying, Cardin, I love you too. I'm just a parent that loves one child a little bit more. Hey, as long as you don't say it, in the presence of the other kid, you know what I'm saying? Then it's okay. And then James Abrams gives us a hippo little dance-in animation that says V for victory. I assume an awesome shout out for victory. For Heidi. We got another super chat. Thank you again, Jay Watt, for if it makes you feel better, Cardin, you're the main reason I became an independent, even more so than a Yang. Oh, Jay Watt. Oh, my heart soars.
Moving on, though. I like this. Is interesting. Get this one, Cardin?
And then you want to read it? You seem to like it. You can read it.
I guess now I have to read it. Oh, God, no. Rebug Custom FX says, how does Heidi feel about Andrew endorsing Biden? And do you think Biden can beat Trump if he doesn't adopt any of the more progressive policies? I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of it. I gotta admit, I'm not a huge Biden fan. So not really into him. Before coronavirus, I would have said Biden's going to get completely demolished. I think that with coronavirus, it's a little bit of a different situation. I actually think it's going to be very close because you had all these pivot counties that went Obama to Trump. And then Trump did some things that they didn't really like there was some food stamp reduction and certain things. And you could definitely see those counties pivot back because a lot of those people voted Obama and went to Trump. And you could definitely see them go Biden because they will associate that as going back to, the original policies from before that they supported. So I think that's going to be extremely close. It's going to actually be a very interesting election now with us being in a state of emergency, possibly all the way until November. We don't actually know what the situation is going to be like, but with the economy on a downturn, it's not really good to be a sitting president with the economy going down rapidly. That's not really a good situation to be in. And that's usually when they do lose historically is during national emergencies or economic crises. So I think it's going to be very tough. It's going to be very close. I'm not a huge fan of either of them. Slight
imagine
preference
if it
for
wasn't
Biden, but,
right? But imagine if the Democrats had picked Well, Yang, of course, right? But imagine if there was like a Democratic candidate that wasn't like, oh God, but it's Joe Biden. Like, it'd be looking very bright for them right about now. But I feel
Really
like
good.
there's just
Really
like
good.
there's like the bite back there. Why don't we also get to this? Our friend Ducky Hodges said, "Hi, missed y'all. Was sick for almost 2 weeks, but hospitals in Chicago didn't want to test me because I wasn't sick enough. That sucks, man. But he says,
welcome to socialized healthcare.
I am back now. Love you, Heidi. So fair.
Thank you so much.
Exactly. I know it's funny. Some states have different takes on that. Some are like, I guess some take like the public school method of like we get paid per head, so they're like everyone's sick. We have everyone, and then others are like, no, we want to just test people that are on the other end. It's I don't know. It's one of the weird things. It's one of the things that's about living in the United States, where we have basically 50 nation states, according to Gavin Newsom, our great governor here. So now let's move everywhere up. Is there any other just last things aside from we talked about Joe Biden, we talked about Cascadia, we talked about the internet, but any things we can talk about that you definitely want to just kind of I don't know. The floor is yours, I guess, so to speak, here at the very end.
Yeah, is there anything that you ever like feel people never have a chance to say? Yeah. Like I've helped people run campaigns before.
Any underrated animes? Any?
Yeah. No, actually, I do have one question before the deep one, so you can think about it. Is a part of your campaign in Oregon to get rid of that infernal 55 mile per hour state speed limit?
Well, I wish. I mean, I'm not running for
visiting my family. So yeah, you're right. No, but you got to apply some pressure. I can't stand visiting my family in Oregon because it takes more time to get from the border of California to Oregon going 55 miles per hour than it does going up the 5 and breezing from Redding. Not Redding.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But I couldn't even get them to put up a crosswalk like where I live. Like we have like a park literally right across from where I live. And no crosswalk. Like there's not you'd have to walk like basically like a quarter mile up this way to get to a crosswalk, and you have a beautiful park right in front of you, and there's tons of apartment complexes. And I wrote to the city, I'm like, dude, can you guys put a crosswalk? And they wrote me this like dissertation back on the study that they did that proved that they did not need to put a crosswalk up. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are so lost. How much did it cost you to do that freaking study?
Yeah.
like you could have just painted the lines and like we could have all moved on and walked across the street.
So are you suggesting that big government is often a failure, especially in a localized format? Libertarians for Heidi Briones right here. She's converted. Okay, we got a couple more super chats. Hashtag Team Heidi. So, thanks PSP for providing a platform. And then JWAD also says, I'll be sure to tweet my signed PSP hat once I get my stuff shipped from Oregon to Montana. Yeah, I was that guy, LOL. So it looks like you got a fellow Oregonian going to Montana. And then you were going to say, is there anything that you feel that you never actually get to like communicate that gets lost in the process? What is that?
There's a lot of things. I mean, one thing that's kind of cool is I did a podcast with the Young Republicans of Oregon, which was really fun.
Cool.
And I was on that, and we talked about working together and bipartisanship. And at the end of the conversation, we started talking about like legalizing drugs and things like that. And she was like, well, I really agree with you there. It almost sounds like you're kind of libertarian. And I'm like, well, it's probably because I am. So I'm a left libertarian. So I wish that, more people understood that, you can actually be a left libertarian, you can actually be for personal freedom and, smaller government and things that make more sense, less red tape, less bureaucracy, and still, be on the left. And that's where we can find commonality. So I wish that more people understood, that kind of place that we could find commonality with the right and the left. And we don't have to have these, false dichotomies anymore, where it's like, you're a socialist and you're a fascist or you're this and that. We just really need to find where our commonalities are. And I think that me being a left libertarian, that's something that, Yang was, in my opinion. I think that he was a left libertarian, and I've been waiting for that candidate my whole life. And this is our time. If you feel like you're kind of on the left, but you're also kind of a libertarian, I think that this is our time, and we could be that Tea Party-esque movement. So I think that this is a great moment in history, and I wish more people realized like how important it is and how we can actually get these type of policies done.
All right, Cody, who was that guy that gave the epic barn-burning speech from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange calling for a tea party? Who was that again?
It was the Chicago Rick Santelli, exactly. But like
Rick Santelli.
that's what we need. We need like a non-cringe Tea Party from the Democratic side. I think that's what we need.
Was Heidi Brione's talk right now on Problem Solver Politics as she drank a Red Bull? I saw that Red Bull.
Sugar-free.
So as she drank the sugar-free Red Bull, calling for bipartisanship from the UBI caucus, is that our Rick Santelli? Was it? Who was it?
Santinelli? Someone in chat's gonna be
Yeah,
like,
was that her
Rick Santinelli or something?
Yeah, so was that her Santinelli speech?
Hey, time will tell, so to speak. Right?
Time will tell. Okay, cool.
It could have happened right here.
Yeah,
Problem Solver Politics.
It could have happened right here. So anyway, this has been totally awesome. Thank you, Heidi, for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was a dream. I love it.
Yeah, you stay on. Don't hang up, because as soon as we stop the live stream, we're still going to talk to you.
Also, hold on though. Please, I'll post the link in the descriptions. Yeah, let people know where to find you, where to get you on Twitter. By the way, you are only the second verified Twitter guest we've ever had in the show. So just want to make sure we remind people that you have to carry that to you forever. Make sure your obituary says verified on Twitter. 100 years from now.
I had to hustle butt to do it, and it was like 2 days before Twitter decided they weren't verifying political candidates anymore for whenever. So I figured out how to do it, and then I did it real quick, and they actually verified me. It's pretty awesome.
Hey, got it all on top. Yeah, please let people know where to
go
find
to Heidi2020.com. It actually redirects to my new website now, but you can still use it. You can go to Heidi2020.com. You can check out my policies, my videos, my other interviews. Donate if you feel inclined. If you can't donate and you've got a little bit of time, you can always sign up for text banking or phone banking, and we'd love to have you. Happy to talk to anybody on Twitter too. Definitely follow me there. I'm super active. And if you follow me and then you're active with my posts, then I'll definitely follow you back, and we can DM and chat about whatever you'd like. So totally open.
All right, awesome. We're going to provide links to all of this in the description. Thanks everybody for hanging out. This is Problem Solver Politics. We will see you guys in the next video.